The first time my sister realized I knew about the dress was 20 minutes before she was supposed to walk down the aisle. Morgan stood in the bridal room at Pine Hollow Farm with both hands lifted while Laura Murray checked the hem. The room smelled like hairspray, steamed fabric, and the white roses my mother had ordered by the bucket. 6 women were crowded around the mirrors. My mother was checking the time every few seconds. Laura had been quiet until she reached the left side of Morgan's skirt. Then she stopped. Her fingers went under the lining. She felt along one seam, moved back several inches, and checked again. Morgan looked down. "Is something wrong?" Laura didn't answer her. She looked across the room at me. That was the moment Morgan's face changed. Not much, just enough. Her shoulders tightened. Her eyes moved from Laura to me, then toward our mother. I'd spent my whole life watching Morgan recover when something didn't go her way. Usually she smiled faster. That morning she forgot. "My name is Shelby Foster, and I'm 32 years old. If you've ever been expected to stay quiet so the favorite could keep smiling, I understand. Please like this video and subscribe." I didn't say anything in that bridal room. I didn't need to. By then, I knew which order number belonged to that dress. I knew when the money had left the bank. I knew whose signature had made that possible. What I still didn't know was whether Morgan would admit any of it once everyone else heard the truth. To explain why my sister was wearing my wedding gown, I have to go back to June. Actually, I should go back a little further than that. In my family, Morgan always occupied the place everyone else arranged themselves around. She's 3 years older than me, and my mother, Lori, treated that difference like seniority in a company. Morgan chose first. Morgan announced first. Morgan's problems came first. My father, Glenn, rarely argued with Mom about it. He would look at me afterward and say something like, "You know how your mother gets." I did know. That was part of the problem. When Morgan changed college majors twice, Mom called it courage. When I changed my work schedule to help Dad after knee surgery, Mom called it convenient because I was already nearby. When Morgan forgot Mom's birthday lunch, there had been a misunderstanding. When I arrived 10 minutes late because an interstate wreck closed 2 lanes, Mom said it would be nice if one day started when we planned it. Most of it wasn't dramatic enough to repeat outside the family. That's how it lasted so long. There was always a reason. There was always context. There was always something Morgan needed that mattered more than whatever I'd already promised. The exception was my grandmother, Vicky. She was Dad's mother, and she didn't have much patience for family theater. If Morgan interrupted me, Grandma would say, "Shelby was talking." If Mom volunteered me for something without asking, Grandma would pick up the phone herself. "Your mother says you're making potato salad for 40 people. She told me that too. Are you?" "No." "Good. I'll buy it at the grocery store." She never made a speech about fairness. She simply behaved as if my time belonged to me. Grandma Vicky had run a small tailoring shop on Railroad Avenue. The old photographs showed striped awnings, 2 dress forms in the window, and Grandma standing in the doorway with pins held between her lips. In 1994, she sold the shop to her apprentice, Laura Murray. Laura kept the same long cutting table and the same wooden cabinets. She changed the name on the window, replaced the carpet, and added a proper bridal fitting room. Grandma still visited almost every week until her hands became too stiff for delicate work. When I was growing up, she sometimes took me there on Saturdays. I'd sit behind the counter with a coloring book while she and Laura talked over the sound of sewing machines. The shop always smelled like steam, chalk, and that lemon furniture polish Laura used on the front desk. Grandma had one brass hat pin shaped like a thistle. It wasn't expensive. The metal had darkened around the edges, and one side of the flower was slightly bent. She kept it wrapped in a square of blue cloth. She used it as a private mark. If she finished a gown she especially loved, she tucked the pin into the inner lining before delivery. Laura continued the habit after buying the shop. Grandma once told me, "A label tells you who charged for it. A pin tells you who stood behind the work." I remembered the sentence because she said it while repairing the zipper on my work skirt for free. She died in 2024 at 85. Her death was quiet. The month afterward wasn't. Mom and Morgan handled most of the visible estate work. Dad couldn't get through one box without sitting down. I helped him with utilities, final medical statements, and the folders Grandma kept in a metal filing cabinet. Morgan helped Mom sort jewelry and personal papers. At least, that was what I believed. Grandma didn't leave behind a mansion or some enormous fortune. She had her house, retirement savings, a few investments, and the money from selling the shop decades earlier. Dad received the house. Several charities received small gifts. Morgan and I each got personal items. Morgan chose a pearl bracelet. Grandma had already left me her sewing box. Mom mentioned a few accounts that would take longer to settle, but she made them sound routine. I didn't question it. I worked in bank compliance. I spent all day looking at transactions, access records, and fraud reports. The last thing I wanted after Grandma's funeral was to audit my own family. I also trusted Daniel Aguirre, the trust officer at First State Bank of Opelika. He'd handled Grandma's accounts for years. If something required my signature, I assumed he would call me. He didn't. Life moved forward. Joshua proposed to me in November of 2025, in our kitchen, while I was trying to keep a pan of cornbread from burning. He teaches high school science and can explain the movement of groundwater to a room full of bored students without raising his voice. He'd planned to take me to dinner and propose afterward. Then a thunderstorm knocked out power across part of town. Our reservation closed early, and we ended up eating chili by battery lantern. I turned around from the stove, and he was holding the ring. I said, "You're doing this right now." He said, "I've had it in my pocket for 6 hours. I can't keep pretending my leg doesn't hurt." That was Joshua. No speech he didn't mean. No attempt to turn our life into an advertisement. We set our wedding for October of 2026. We wanted cooler weather and enough time to save. Dad offered to cover the food. Mom said she would help with flowers, though she immediately started suggesting larger arrangements than I wanted. Morgan was not engaged then. She had been dating Alexander Blake for a little over a year. Alexander was polite, controlled, and careful with appearances. His family owned several commercial properties around Auburn and Montgomery. They weren't billionaires. They were simply the kind of family that knew which fork belonged where and noticed when someone else didn't. Morgan liked being noticed by them. In February, she arrived at our parents' house wearing a diamond ring and holding her hand at chest level. Mom screamed before Morgan said anything. Dad hugged her. I hugged her. Joshua shook Alexander's hand and opened the sparkling wine someone had brought. Then Morgan announced they were getting married in August. I thought I'd heard her wrong. "August this year?" I asked. She gave me a bright smile. "That's usually what people mean." Mom touched her arm. "Pine Hollow had a cancellation. You know how impossible that place is to book." My October wedding had been on the family calendar for months. Morgan's date was 10 weeks earlier. I waited for Mom to acknowledge the obvious. She didn't. Instead, she looked at me and said, "This will actually be wonderful. We can reuse some contacts." Joshua was standing beside me with a bottle opener in one hand. He said, "We already have our vendors." Mom gave him the patient look she used when someone resisted a plan she hadn't bothered to discuss. "I mean information, Joshua. No one's taking anything." Morgan held up her hand again. "I didn't choose the cancellation date to compete with Shelby. I hadn't accused her of that." I said, "I know." She watched me for another second, as if disappointed I hadn't given her more to work with. Within 2 weeks, every family conversation became about Morgan's wedding. Mom carried a binder with fabric samples and plastic sleeves. She called during my lunch breaks to ask whether champagne tablecloths looked cheap under warm lights. When I tried to discuss my October plans, she said, "Let's get through August first." Joshua noticed before I complained. One evening, he was washing dishes while I answered a text from Mom about Morgan's rehearsal dinner. He said, "Do you want me to be angry or do you want me to make tea?" "Tea." "Good. I'm already boiling water." I put my phone face down. "It's 10 weeks, I said. Then they'll be done." Joshua dried his hands. "Do you believe that?" "No." He nodded. "Neither do I." My own wedding dress was already underway at Laura's atelier. I had gone there because of Grandma. I also went because Laura knew how to make clothing for an actual person instead of a mannequin. At my first appointment, she locked the front door for lunch and brought out 3 sketches. One was formal and stiff. One had too much lace. The third had a clean neckline, fitted sleeves, and a full skirt that moved without swallowing me. I touched the edge of the paper. That one. Laura smiled. Your grandmother said you would choose it. I looked up. She knew about this. She had opinions about a lot of things that hadn't happened yet. I laughed because that sounded like Grandma. Laura took measurements and made notes in a black workroom ledger. My order number was 1187. She wrote it on a cream claim ticket and slid the matching copy beneath a brass clip behind the desk. I asked what the gown would cost. Laura said. Vicky arranged the main portion. I thought she meant Grandma had left store credit or prepaid for materials before she died. That would have been typical of her. She liked handling practical gifts quietly. How much did she arrange? I asked. Laura glanced toward the workroom. That part's being handled through the bank. It was a strange answer, but not a frightening one. I said, I don't want you losing money because Grandma made a promise. I won't. Are you sure? Laura looked at me over her glasses. Shelby, I've known you since you were carried through that door. I'm sure. I let it go. That decision bothered me later. At the time, it felt respectful. Grandma had wanted to give me something. Laura understood the arrangement. Daniel had the estate paperwork. I didn't see any reason to pull apart a gift just because paperwork existed behind it. Morgan chose Laura's shop, too. That surprised me. She had already visited bridal boutiques in Birmingham and Atlanta. She showed Mom photographs of gowns with hand embroidery, imported fabric, and prices neither of them discussed around Dad. Then one Saturday, Morgan called me. What did Laura charge for yours? I don't know the full total yet. How do you not know? Grandma left some kind of credit. There was a pause. I heard a turn signal clicking through Morgan's car speakers. What kind of credit? I'm not sure. Laura said the bank was handling it. Morgan was quiet again. Then she said, Well, that must be nice. Her tone made me sit straighter. It was Grandma's decision. I didn't say it wasn't. You made it sound like I asked for something. Morgan sighed. Shelby, I'm driving. I called to ask a basic question, then ask Laura. I will. She ended the call without saying goodbye. A week later, Mom told me Morgan had ordered her gown from Laura. We were in Mom's kitchen. She was arranging invitation samples across the table while Dad tried to read the newspaper at the other end. I said, I thought she wanted the one in Atlanta. Mom didn't look up. The timing didn't work. What did she choose? Something custom. Dad lowered the paper. How much is custom? Mom moved one invitation over another. Glenn, please don't start. I asked how much. Morgan and Alexander are handling it. That turned out not to be true, but I didn't know that then. Mom looked at me. Laura may need to schedule your fittings together. She's doing us a favor because August is so close. I already have appointments. And Morgan has a wedding first. Dad folded the newspaper. Lori? What? Mom said. That's just the calendar. I kept my voice even. I can call Laura myself. Mom smiled, relieved that I had once again made the difficult thing easy. Thank you. I knew you wouldn't be precious about it. I hated that sentence. I hated it more because I didn't answer. Laura's assistant, Jacob Morales, called the following Monday. He apologized 3 times before explaining that the workroom schedule had been double booked. Jacob was new enough to sound nervous whenever he changed an appointment. He said, I have Morgan at 10 and you at 11:30 on the same Thursday. Ms. Murray thought it might be easier if you both came at 10. Your mother said that worked. My mother isn't managing my appointments. Silence followed. Then Jacob said, Right. I'm sorry. I rubbed my forehead. It's fine. Is Laura asking me to change? She said only if it's convenient. I checked my work calendar. Thursday morning was open because I had moved a review meeting to Friday. I can do 10. Thank you. I'll put both Foster orders together. I heard keyboard taps. Then he added 1187 and 1188. Which one is Morgan's? He hesitated. I believe hers is 1188. You believe? I'm looking at the appointment screen. The physical tickets are at the desk. I nearly asked him to check. Then someone spoke in the background and Jacob said, I'm sorry, I have a delivery standing here. It's okay, I'll see you Thursday. That Thursday morning, Joshua offered to come with me. I told him not to. He had a workshop at school, and I expected the fitting to take less than an hour. Mom was coming. Morgan would be there. Laura had known us for decades. Nothing about it felt dangerous. That's the embarrassing truth. People hear what happened later and ask whether I sensed something. I didn't. I expected Morgan to monopolize the mirror. I expected Mom to comment on my shoulders. I expected to leave tired and irritated. I didn't expect theft. Railroad Avenue was already hot when I parked. The sidewalk threw sunlight against the shop windows, and someone from the coffee place next door was dragging a chalkboard sign toward the curb. Morgan's white SUV was parked in front. Mom's car was behind it. Inside, Jacob stood at the counter with 2 garment bags laid across a padded bench. Each bag had a cream claim ticket tied near the zipper. One read 1187, the other read 1188. Morgan came out of the fitting room barefoot, wearing a satin robe the shop provided. She looked at my work clothes and said, You could have changed. I came from the office. Mom was seated near the mirror with a coffee cup in her hand. You're late, she said. I checked the wall clock. It was 9:58. Morgan said, We started because Laura needs extra time with mine. Laura stepped through the workroom curtain carrying a pincushion. No, we started because Morgan arrived early. Mom waved one hand. Same difference. Laura met my eyes. It was a small thing, but I felt better. She said, Your gown is ready for the main fitting. Give me 5 minutes with your sister's bodice. I sat near the padded bench. The garment bags were close enough that the plastic brushed my knee. I could see ivory fabric through one narrow, clear panel. The other bag looked fuller and had tissue packed around the sleeves. Jacob answered the phone. Mom went to the counter to ask about the remaining balance. Morgan stood on the fitting platform while Laura pinned the side of her bodice. She kept turning toward the mirror before Laura finished. Hold still, Laura said. I am holding still. You're rotating. I'm trying to see the back. I'll give you 2 mirrors when the pins aren't near your ribs. Morgan laughed and looked at Mom. She still talks to me like I'm 12. Laura said, I talk to everyone like they don't want to bleed. Mom signed something at the counter. Jacob pointed to one line, then another. I wasn't paying close attention. I was answering a message from Joshua about dinner. When I looked up, Morgan had stepped down from the platform. She crossed to the padded bench and picked up her phone. Her robe sleeve caught one of the claim tickets. It swung against the garment bag. She steadied it with her hand. Then Mom called my name. Shelby, do you have the card Dad gave you for the florist deposit? I turned toward her. No, you kept it. I gave it back. You put it in your binder. For the next minute, Mom emptied papers onto the counter. Jacob helped her search. Laura took Morgan behind the curtain to change. I stayed in my chair until Mom found the card inside an envelope. Then Laura called me into the fitting room. My gown looked beautiful. At least, I believed it was mine. The neckline sat a little higher than I remembered. The waist felt tight on one side and loose on the other. Laura worked quickly, adding pins and checking the sleeves. I said, The mock-up felt different. It's the inner structure, she said. Let me settle it before you judge. I trusted her. That was why I didn't look at the order tag sewn beneath the lining. I didn't inspect the garment bag when Jacob zipped the dress inside it. I didn't compare the ticket he handed Mom with the ticket attached to the bag. Mom signed the receipt and paid the balance at the counter. Morgan carried one garment bag outside. I carried the other. Mom held the door open and said, See? That wasn't so hard. For her, it hadn't been. 3 weeks later, I stood in my bedroom wearing the dress again while Joshua looked at the back zipper. He said, Are you sure this is the same one? I turned toward the mirror. That question was where everything started. I looked at him in the mirror. What do you mean? Joshua kept one hand near the zipper without touching it. The back doesn't look like the sketch. You remember the sketch? It was on our refrigerator for 4 months. I turned sideways. The skirt shifted around my feet with a dry whisper. I had put the dress on because Laura wanted me to check the sleeve length with the shoes I planned to wear. The shoes were still in their box. I hadn't gotten that far. Maybe it changes when it's fitted, I said. Maybe. He didn't sound convinced. I faced forward again and studied the neckline. At the shop, I had blamed the lighting. My bedroom had 2 ordinary lamps and an overhead fixture that made everything look worse. It also made the difference harder to ignore. The neckline was almost right. That was the strange part. It wasn't a different style. It was the same general shape made by someone who had seen the sketch and missed a few decisions. My sleeves were supposed to end at the wrist bone. These covered half my hands. The waist seam angled slightly downward on the left. The skirt had the right fullness, but it fell straight instead of holding the softer shape Laura had built into the mock-up. Joshua moved beside me. Can you breathe? Yes. Can you lift your arms? I tried. The sleeves pulled across my shoulders, not comfortably. He crouched and looked at the hem without touching it. You said Laura had this nearly finished. She did. Then why is it this far off? I watched myself in the mirror. At first, I thought she was rushing because of Morgan. Joshua stood again. Do you still think that? I didn't answer. The dress was heavy. The room was warm and the zipper pressed against my spine. Help me out of it. He lowered the zipper carefully. I stepped out and laid the gown across our bed. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then Joshua said, "Call Laura tomorrow." I will. He picked up the empty garment bag from the chair. A cream ticket swung from the zipper. I reached for it. The number printed at the top was 1188. I read it twice. Joshua looked over my shoulder. What is that? The order number. Is it yours? No. That answer came too quickly to be uncertain. My number was 1187. I'd seen it on Laura's sketch page. She had written it on the measurement card, the fabric envelope, and the original claim ticket. I remembered because the final 2 digits matched the year my department had recently used in a training case. My brain holds on to numbers that way. Joshua took the ticket and held it closer to the lamp. 1188, he said. I see it. What was Morgan's? I thought about Jacob's phone call. He had said, I believe hers is 1188. At the time, I'd barely noticed. Now I sat on the edge of the bed. Joshua handed the ticket back. Could Laura have switched the bags? Maybe. That would explain the fit. Maybe. He waited. He knows I repeat words when I'm trying not to move ahead of facts. I looked at the dress again. Morgan and I weren't the same size. We were close enough for a rushed fitting to hide a problem, but not close enough for a finished gown to fit both of us. Morgan was taller through the torso. Her shoulders were narrower. She usually wore higher heels. This dress was too long in the sleeves and wrong through my shoulders. Joshua said, Do you want me to take pictures? Yes. I put the ticket flat on the dresser. He photographed the front and back. Then I opened the garment bag and found a small paper pocket sewn near the top. Inside was a carbon copy of the pickup slip. The copy also showed 1188. Under customer name, the writing had been covered by a folded alterations note. I pulled the note out. The name beneath it was smudged. I could make out an M, followed by what looked like an O. Joshua leaned over the dresser. That says Morgan. Probably. You don't have to say probably. I do until I know. He looked at me for a second. All right. My paper planner was in my work tote downstairs. I went to get it while still wearing my slip. Joshua followed with the dress ticket. In March, when Laura gave me the original appointment dates, I had written them on the monthly calendar. Beside the first fitting, I'd added 1187 in blue ink. I laid the planner open on the kitchen table. The ticket said 1188. My calendar said 1187. Joshua took another photograph with both in the frame. He included the date, the ticket, and the order number I had written months earlier. Why are we photographing this? He asked. Because paper moves. You think someone will change it? I think I want a record of what's in our house tonight. That was the first deliberate choice I made. Until then, I had been reacting. I had noticed the fit. I had remembered a number. I had told myself there was probably a shop mistake. Sitting at our kitchen table, I decided to stop explaining the mistake before I understood it. I opened my laptop. The confirmation email from Laura's shop was dated March 9th. The subject line read, Foster Order 1187, Fitting Schedule. I saved the email as a PDF and forwarded it to my personal archive account. Then I photographed the label inside the garment bag. Joshua put the kettle on. You do this at work, don't you? Not exactly. It looks exactly like what you do at work. At work, I have system access. And here? Here I have a dress that isn't mine. He set 2 mugs on the counter. Do you want to call Morgan? No, your mother. No, Laura. Tomorrow during business hours. He poured the water. Why not now? Because it's after 9. Laura's home. Jacob might answer the shop phone if it rolls over. I want whoever has the records in front of them. Joshua brought me a mug. What do you think happened? I looked at the ticket again. I think the bags got switched. It was the simplest answer. 2 sisters, 2 appointments, 2 consecutive order numbers, a young assistant who had double-booked the schedule, garment bags laid beside each other. Still, one detail bothered me. If we had accidentally taken the wrong bags, Morgan had my dress. She had been home from her honeymoon planning trip for nearly 2 weeks. She had sent Mom photographs from 3 bridal appointments. She had posted a picture of garment bags hanging in her guest room. She had not called me. I pulled up the photographs she had posted. There were 4 garment bags against a white closet door. One held her rehearsal dinner outfit. Another came from a boutique in Birmingham. The longest bag had Laura's shop name printed across the front. The claim ticket wasn't visible. Joshua sat across from me. Could she not have tried it on? Morgan? Fair point. I enlarged the picture. The bottom of Laura's garment bag curved outward. The dress inside had a full skirt. That told me nothing. Both gowns had full skirts. I closed the photograph. I'm not calling her until I talk to the shop. Joshua nodded. That makes sense. You don't have to agree with everything. I don't. I think you should have asked Laura about the fit before leaving. So do I. I also think your mother made the whole appointment confusing. So do I. And I think Morgan knew her order number. I looked at him. He lifted his mug. You said I didn't have to agree with everything. The next morning, I took the garment bag ticket to work. I didn't tell anyone why. I slipped it into a clear document sleeve and put it in the locked drawer beneath my desk. The dress stayed at home in the garment bag. Joshua moved it to the spare room so the cats wouldn't get near the fabric. My first meeting began at 8. I reviewed a series of disputed card transactions from 3 branches, then sat through a software demonstration that took 40 minutes to explain a button. I kept thinking about the 2 order numbers. At 10:15, I called Laura's shop. Jacob answered. Railroad Avenue Bridal, this is Jacob. Hi, Jacob, it's Shelby Foster. Oh, hi. How are you? I'm fine. I need to confirm an order number. Sure. Give me 1 second. I heard paper moving and a drawer sliding open. What number do you have? He asked. 1187. His keyboard clicked. Yes, that's the Foster order. Which Foster? The clicking stopped. He said, Shelby? And 1188? More clicking. That's also under Foster. Which one? A pause followed. Morgan. I turned my office chair toward the wall. The garment bag I brought home has 1188 attached. Jacob didn't speak. Is Laura there? I asked. She's with a client. Can you check the physical pickup copies? I can check the front desk copies. Please do. He set the phone down. I heard footsteps, then the faint ring of the shop bell. Someone asked a question I couldn't make out. Almost 2 minutes passed before Jacob returned. Okay, he said. I have both copies. What does mine show? 1187, Shelby Foster. And Morgan's? 1188, Morgan Foster. Which order did my mother sign for? Paper shifted again. There's a card receipt attached to 1188. That made sense if Mom had paid Morgan's balance. What about 1187? That one shows outside payment. What does outside payment mean? I'm not really supposed to explain account notes. I'm not asking you to explain it. I'm asking what the receipt says. He lowered his voice. It says paid through First State. I sat very still. I had known Grandma arranged something through the bank. Laura had told me that much. Seeing it described as payment wasn't surprising. The timing was. When did First State pay? I don't have that date on the front copy. Was my order marked picked up? Another pause. Yes. By whom? It doesn't say. You have no name? There should be a claim ticket. I have the wrong claim ticket. Right. Jacob sounded increasingly uncomfortable. I kept my voice calm. Tell me what the desk record shows. Did 1187 leave the shop? He inhaled. The other foster order went out the same day. One of you must have grabbed the wrong slot. The phrase caught my attention. Wrong slot? The pickup space. We put finished orders in numbered spaces behind the counter. Was my dress finished? I think so. You think so? I don't work in the sewing room. Did Laura release both dresses? She was here. That wasn't my question. He stopped answering. I heard Laura's voice in the distance. Then Jacob said, Can I have her call you? Yes. Is this about the fit? It's about the number. I'm sure it's just the bags. If it were only the bags, the dress inside would fit me. He said nothing. I wrote down the time of the call. Please ask Laura not to change either order record before she speaks to me. His voice sharpened with worry. We wouldn't change anything. I'm not accusing you. I'm asking you to preserve it. Okay. And Jacob? Yes? Don't call Morgan yet. He hesitated long enough to make me wonder whether he already had. I'll tell Laura you called, he said. When we hung up, I typed a note while the conversation was fresh. I included his exact words about the other foster order leaving the same day. I emailed the note to myself and saved it with the appointment confirmation. Then I waited. Laura didn't call that morning. At noon, Mom texted our family group. Morgan's invitations arrived. Come by Sunday so we can stuff and stamp. Morgan added a photograph of cream envelopes tied with a green ribbon. Dad responded with a thumbs up. I didn't answer. 3 minutes later, Mom texted me separately. Did you see the group? Yes. Can you come Sunday? What time? After lunch. Morgan wants to finish all of them. I can come for an hour. She has over 200. Then she'll need more people. Mom sent 3 dots, stopped, then sent them again. What else are you doing? I looked around my office. My lunch sat unopened beside the keyboard. Things for my own wedding. Her response arrived immediately. You have months. There it was. I set my phone down instead of answering. Around 1, Laura called. Her voice sounded careful. Jacob tells me you have the wrong claim number. Yes, bring the gown in. I can come Saturday. Come before we open. 8:30. What do your records show? I want to see the garment first. Jacob said both orders left the same day. He shouldn't have discussed another client's order. The other client is my sister, and I may have her dress. That still doesn't make it his information to give. Laura wasn't scolding me. She was upset with the situation and trying to put rules back around it. I said, Did you finish my gown before the appointment? Yes. Did you pin it? Silence. It lasted only a second, but I heard it. Laura said, Bring me what you have. Did you pin my gown? I need to inspect the lining. That wasn't an answer. It also wasn't a denial. I looked through the glass wall of my office. 2 co-workers were talking near the printer. Neither looked at me. Laura, I'm trying to understand whether this is a labeling mistake. So am I. You made both gowns. I supervised both orders. Wouldn't you know which one I tried on? Her chair creaked. I had 3 rush alterations that week. Your sister added changes late. The fitting room was crowded. Your mother was paying at the counter. Jacob was handling bags. I won't guess over the phone. That was fair. It also told me the morning had been less controlled than I assumed. Does Morgan know I called? I asked. Not from me. Did Jacob call her? I told him not to discuss this with anyone. I pressed my thumb against the edge of my desk. Why did my order show paid through First State? Laura went quiet again. You knew Vicky arranged payment. I knew there was something with the bank. I didn't know it was already paid. That isn't something I can explain casually. Why not? Because I'm not the trustee. I had heard that word at work hundreds of times. I had never connected it to my dress. Who is? Call Daniel. The answer changed the room. Not dramatically. The lights stayed on. Someone laughed near the printer. My computer displayed the same transaction list it had displayed before, but a switched garment bag no longer explained everything. I said, "Why would a wedding dress need a trustee?" Laura exhaled slowly. "Call Daniel, then bring the gown Saturday morning. Are those connected? I don't know yet." That was the first answer she gave me that I fully believed. After we hung up, I searched my email for Daniel's name. The last message from him was nearly a year old. It concerned a tax document from Grandma's estate. His signature included a direct office number. I picked up the phone, then stopped. I wanted to know what I was asking before I asked it. At work, people often ruined useful conversations by showing the other person exactly which fact mattered. They asked, "Why did you transfer the money on Tuesday instead of, 'Walk me through Tuesday'?" The first question offered a target. The second made room for mistakes. I opened a clean notebook page. I wrote down what I knew. My order was 1187. Morgan's was 1188. The bag in my house carried Morgan's number. Both orders left the shop on the same day. Mom's card receipt was attached to Morgan's order. My order showed payment from First State. Laura had told me to call Daniel. Everything below that line was assumption. I didn't write that Morgan had taken my dress. I didn't write that Mom had helped her. I didn't write that anyone had planned anything. Then I called Daniel's office. His assistant answered and said he was in meetings until late afternoon. "Can I schedule an appointment?" I asked. "What's it regarding?" "An estate payment connected to Vicky Foster." The assistant's tone changed slightly. "Are you Shelby Foster?" "Yes." "One moment." She put me on hold. When she returned, she offered me 8:30 the next morning. I accepted. Before leaving work that evening, I printed the appointment email, the photograph of both order numbers, and my note from the call with Jacob. I placed them in a blue folder. Joshua was making pasta when I got home. He looked at the folder under my arm. "So it isn't just the bag." "I don't know what it is." He turned off the burner. "What did Laura say?" "She told me to talk to the trustee." "The trustee for what?" "That's what I'm finding out tomorrow." He looked toward the spare room. "And the dress? Laura wants it Saturday. Does Morgan have yours?" I set the blue folder on the table. Both dresses left the shop. "That isn't what I asked." "No." He waited. I finally said, "If the shop records are right, then yes." Morgan left with mine. Joshua pulled out a chair and sat down. Accidentally? I thought about Morgan touching the ticket on the padded bench. I thought about her pause when I mentioned the bank months earlier. I thought about 2 garment bags close enough for one hand to reach both. "I'm not calling it an accident yet," I said. That was when I knew I had stopped trying to make the answer harmless. The next morning, I reached First State 15 minutes early. The trust department was on the second floor, above the main lobby. It had gray carpet, framed photographs of downtown Opelika, and a coffee machine that produced something close to coffee if you added enough cream. Daniel met me in the waiting area. He wore a navy suit without a tie and carried a legal pad. He looked more tired than I remembered. "Shelby, come on back." His office faced the courthouse. A stack of estate files sat on the floor beside one bookcase. He closed the door after me. "What happened with the dress?" The question told me Laura had called him. I placed the blue folder on his desk. "What did she tell you?" "That you may have received the wrong garment." "Did she say anything else?" "She asked me to locate Vicky's trust file." I opened the folder and slid the order photographs toward him. "My order number is 1187. The dress in my house is tagged 1188. The shop says both dresses left on the same day." Daniel studied the photographs. "And 1188 belongs to Morgan?" "Yes." He wrote both numbers on his legal pad. "Did Morgan contact the bank?" I don't know. That's why I'm here. Daniel sat back. All right, start with what you were told about the trust. Nothing. His pen stopped. Nothing at all? Laura said Grandma arranged the main payment. She called it something the bank was handling. I assumed Grandma prepaid the shop. Daniel looked toward the file cabinet behind him. You didn't receive a copy of the bridal trust notice? No. He stood and opened a cabinet drawer. I mailed one after the estate closed. To which address? He read from a file label. Your parents' address on Linden Street. I haven't lived there in years. That was the address provided by the co-executors. Who were the co-executors? Your father and your mother. Dad's involvement didn't surprise me. Mom's did. What happened to the notice? I can't answer that. Did someone sign for it? It wasn't sent certified. He pulled out a thick folder and returned to his desk. Vicky's instructions were unusual, but they weren't complicated. He opened the folder to a typed document with several colored tabs. The trust holds $38,000. I stared at him. For a dress? For one specific dress? That can't be right. It is. I looked down at the page. The amount appeared twice. $38,000 held as restricted funds. Grandma had worn the same winter coat for at least 12 years. She cut dryer sheets in half. She complained when the grocery store raised the price of canned tomatoes by 15 cents. She put $38,000 aside for my wedding gown? Yes. Why? Daniel folded his hands over the legal pad. She didn't include an explanation in the trust document. That's more than I planned to spend on my whole wedding. I understand. No, I mean, Joshua and I have a spreadsheet. We're trying to keep everything under 25. Daniel waited until I stopped talking. Then he turned the document toward me. The money isn't payable to you. It can only be paid to Laura's atelier as final payment on the gown Vicky described. What did she describe? A gown ordered for you, made under a registered shop order, and completed through Laura's workroom. He tapped a paragraph near the bottom. There are conditions for release. The delivered gown must match the registered order number. Laura must certify that it's complete. The gown must also carry the shop's designated pin. I read the paragraph myself. The language was formal, but the meaning was clear. One gown. My order. Laura's certification. Grandma's thistle pin. I sat back. Why make it this complicated? Daniel glanced at the document. Vicky was concerned the money would be redirected. By whom? She didn't name anyone. Did she say she expected that? Not in writing. That careful phrase told me there had been a conversation. What did she say to you? Daniel adjusted the document so it was square with the edge of his desk. She said she wanted to pay for something beautiful for you. She also said she wanted to be certain the gift reached the right person. I looked at the amount again. Did my parents know? They knew the trust existed. Did Morgan? She wasn't a beneficiary or trustee, so I didn't send her formal notice. That wasn't my question. No, he said. It wasn't. He turned several pages. Your mother requested a complete estate copy while acting as co-executor. The trust document was included. Morgan had helped Mom sort Grandma's estate papers. I remembered them working at the dining room table with folders spread between them. Morgan brought sticky tabs. Mom made lists. I still had no proof Morgan saw this document. But she had asked me what kind of credit Laura mentioned. When I said the bank was handling it, she'd gone silent. I pointed to the release conditions. Has the money been paid? Daniel looked at his computer. According to the account summary, yes. When? He entered a password and opened another screen. His expression changed. It wasn't shock. Daniel had spent too many years around money to react that openly. His mouth tightened and he leaned closer to the monitor. May 28th. My fitting had been in June. That was before my final fitting. Yes. The dress wasn't finished. He looked at me. Are you certain? Laura told me it was ready for the main fitting. She spent almost an hour pinning it. That was the dress you brought home? I don't know anymore. He returned to the screen. The payment was released to the atelier as a final disbursement. Who approved it? The processing record lists my department. That isn't a person. He gave me a brief look that said he heard the tone. I submitted the trust terms when we established the account. Routine releases are processed through our estate operations team once the required documents are marked received. Were they received? The system says the file was complete. Can you show me the certification? He reached for the mouse, opened another window, and waited. No scanned image is attached here. Does that happen? Older estate documents are sometimes stored separately. This isn't old. No. Then, where is it? I need to pull the release packet. How long will that take? It may be in Central Records. Give me until Monday. It was Friday morning. I pointed to the payment date. You released $38,000 without having the certification on this screen. The system indicates the certification was received, but you can't see it. Not from this interface. I understood the difference he was drawing. I also understood why it mattered to him. He wasn't saying the bank had no document. He was saying he couldn't locate it while I sat there. Who would have sent the certification? Laura. She told me to ask you. Daniel took off his glasses and cleaned them with a cloth. I'm aware. Would she tell me to ask you if she had signed it? I'm not going to speculate. Does the certification include the order number? It should. Which number? He put his glasses back on. That's what I need to verify. I turned toward the window. A delivery truck stopped near the curb below. 2 people crossed the street carrying drinks. The dress had seemed like a family problem, maybe an ugly one, but still contained. 2 sisters had left a shop with the wrong bags. Mom had signed the wrong receipt. Someone needed to return a gown. Now there was bank money attached to one of those bags. Can the payment be reversed? I asked. If the conditions weren't met, the bank would have to address it. What does address it mean? It means recovering the disbursement or correcting the file. From Laura? Potentially. She may not have done anything wrong. I didn't say she did. What if my sister has the gown the trust paid for? Daniel set his pen down. Then we need facts before anyone moves the dress. That sentence stayed with me. Why? Because the trust paid the atelier for a specific delivered garment. If that garment was delivered to someone else, ownership and payment no longer line up. Meaning what? Meaning we shouldn't pretend this is only a fitting mistake. I looked at him. He had finally said the part everyone else was avoiding. Daniel printed the account summary and stamped it confidential. The page showed the trust balance before release, the full payment to Laura's atelier, and the May date. He didn't give me the trust document. You're entitled to a beneficiary copy, he said. I'll prepare one after I confirm your current address. Can I read the certification clause again? He turned the document toward me. I copied the wording into my notebook. I also copied the section identifying Laura and the thistle pin. Daniel watched me write. Don't contact estate operations yourself, he said. I wouldn't know whom to contact. You work for a bank. You could find out. Not this bank. You know what I mean. I closed the notebook. Are you asking me not to discuss my own trust? I'm asking you to let me retrieve the file before this becomes an accusation. I haven't accused anyone. I know. His voice softened. That's why I'm asking. I agreed to wait until Monday for the release packet. I did not agree to wait before speaking to my family. That evening, Mom called to remind me about Sunday's invitation stuffing. I asked whether Morgan would be there. Of course she'll be there. They're her invitations. Will Dad? He lives here, Shelby. I mean, at the table. Mom sighed. I assume so. Why? I need to ask about the dresses. The line went quiet. What about them? I think Morgan and I left with the wrong garment bags. Mom laughed once. Not because it was funny. It was the sound she made when she wanted a problem to become smaller, then switch them back. I haven't spoken to Morgan. I'll call her. Don't. Another silence. Mom said, Why are you being strange? I want both bags brought Sunday. I'll bring mine. We're stuffing invitations. We don't need wedding gowns all over the house. Then I'll come before. I said I'll call her. Please don't. Mom's voice cooled. You don't get to tell me whether I can call my own daughter. I nearly pointed out that I was also her daughter. I didn't. Just ask Morgan to bring the bag without telling her the number issue. What number issue? I'll explain Sunday. Shelby, I'm not playing some compliance game with you. It isn't a game. Then say what you think happened. I looked at the bank summary on my kitchen table. I think the bags were switched. I'm trying to find out how. Mom exhaled. You always do this. Do what? Turn a simple mistake into a review. That's my job. We are not your job. No. At work, people answer questions. She didn't speak for several seconds. Then she said, I'll ask Morgan to bring the dress. When we arrived Sunday, Morgan's garment bag wasn't there. The invitations covered the dining room table. Mom had set out bowls of stamps, return address labels, and damp sponges. Dad sat at the far end sealing envelopes. Morgan was drinking iced tea and checking names against a spreadsheet. She looked at the garment bag over my arm. Why did you bring your dress here? I think it's yours. She didn't reach for it. Mom picked up a stack of envelopes. Can we please finish one thing before starting another? I laid the bag across the back of the sofa. I said, Where's Morgan's? Morgan kept looking at her spreadsheet. At home. Mom said you'd bring it. She said you were confused about the tickets. I checked mine. My eyes moved to her. What did it say? 1187. She answered without hesitation. My order number. Dad stopped sealing an envelope. Morgan looked up and smiled. So yes, we got the wrong bags. Mystery solved. Did you try on the dress? Obviously. When? The day after the fitting. And you didn't notice it wasn't yours? She gave me the same patient look Mom used. Our gowns are similar. No, they aren't. They're both ivory with full skirts. That doesn't make them similar. Mom put the envelopes down. Shelby, what exactly do you want? I want Morgan to bring my gown back. Morgan leaned into her chair. I can do that after the shower. Your shower is next weekend. I know when it is. Why wait? Because it's packed correctly and I don't want to drag it across town twice. I looked at Mom. She said, That's reasonable. No, it isn't. Dad shifted in his chair. Why don't we drive over and get it now? Morgan's smile disappeared. Because Alexander is at my house. So? Dad asked. So he can't see the dress. It's in a bag. Glenn, Mom said, leave it. Dad looked down at the envelope in his hand. I took the bank summary from my purse and set it on the table. Mom's eyes moved to the amount. What is that? Grandma left a restricted trust to pay for my gown. Morgan's fingers stopped above her keyboard. I watched her. She recovered quickly. Mom picked up the page. You knew Vicky was helping. I didn't know she left $38,000. Dad stared at her. 38? The bank released it in May, I said, before my final fitting. Morgan closed her laptop. That sounds like Laura's problem. The trust paid for one specific dress. Mom pushed the paper back toward me. Then Laura can sort out which bag belongs to which person. I need my dress returned first. Morgan stood. I said I'll return it. Today. Her chair scraped the floor. Why are you acting like I stole it? I held her eyes. I haven't used that word. You're implying it. Mom stepped between us, though neither of us had moved. This is Morgan's wedding season. You are not going to make her moment about yourself because a shop assistant mixed up 2 tags. The gown was paid for with my trust, and she's bringing it back. After her shower. Mom's mouth tightened. Yes, after her shower, that is the answer. I looked at Dad. He pressed one stamp onto an envelope and smoothed it with his thumb. Morgan picked up her laptop. If we're done interrogating me, I have things to do. She walked toward the kitchen. Mom gathered the bank summary and handed it back. I'll sort it out with the shop. When? Tomorrow. What are you going to ask them? Her face hardened. Shelby, enough. Your sister has waited her whole life for this wedding. I folded the account summary and returned it to my purse. So have I. Mom didn't answer. Neither did Dad. I took the garment bag from the sofa and left before anyone asked me to stay. On the drive home, Laura called. I answered through the car speakers. Did you inspect the dress? I asked. Yes. And? Her voice was low. "The gown you brought me yesterday was made under Morgan's order." I tightened my hands on the steering wheel. "So she has mine. She has the gown from 1187. Are you certain?" "Yes." Traffic slowed near the railroad crossing. I stopped behind a red pickup. Laura said, "There's something else." The crossing lights began to flash. "What?" I checked the workroom log. The gate lowered in front of me. Laura said, "I need you to come to the shop alone." The train passed slowly enough that I counted 12 freight cars before I could move again. "I can be there in 20 minutes, I said. "Use the back door." "Why?" Your mother called. I looked at the clock on the dashboard. "She already called you?" "Twice." "What did she say?" "That there had been an innocent pickup error and I needed to correct it without upsetting Morgan." "Did she mention the trust?" "No." The crossing gate rose. "I'm on my way." Laura's shop was closed on Sundays, but her car was parked behind the building. I pulled into the narrow service lane and knocked on the metal door beside the trash enclosure. She opened it almost immediately. "Come in." The workroom looked different without customers. Half-finished gowns hung from a rolling rack. Pattern paper covered the cutting table. The sewing machines were silent. My garment bag lay open beneath a bright work lamp. The dress was turned inside out. Laura had pinned the lining away from the bodice. Every seam was exposed. Small chalk marks ran along the waist. She closed the back door and locked it. "Why did Mom call you twice?" "She said you were overreacting. She says that before she knows what happened." I noticed. Laura took off her glasses and cleaned them on the edge of her shirt. The first call was polite. The second wasn't. What changed? I told her I wouldn't accept responsibility until I reviewed both orders. "What did she say?" "She reminded me that your family has known me for decades." I looked at the open dress. "That sounds like her. She also said Morgan's wedding couldn't be disrupted over a clerical mistake. Did you ask why it would be disrupted?" "Yes." "What did she say?" "That brides are emotional." I pulled out a chair. "Mom doesn't know what the trust requires. She knew enough to call before I opened tomorrow." Laura put her glasses back on. "Sit down. I need to show you something." She brought the black workroom ledger from the cutting table. The cover was worn smooth along the edges. Several loose pages had been tucked beneath an elastic band. Laura opened it near the middle. Each order took 2 facing pages. The left page contained measurements, fabric information, and fitting dates. The right held workroom notes written in several different hands. She pointed to the top corner, 1187. My name was written below it. I recognized the measurements. I also recognized Laura's sketch of the neckline and the little notation beside the sleeve. She turned the page toward me. "Your gown was cut from this pattern. The main work began in April. I finished the handwork the morning of the joint fitting." "The same morning?" "I came in before 6. Why?" "Because your sister added another change to her gown, and I knew the appointment would run long." Laura moved her finger down the page. Near the bottom, she had written a date and 2 words. "Thistle placed." Beside that was a short notation describing the location inside the left skirt seam. "You put Grandma's pin in my gown." "Yes." "Before I tried it on?" "Yes." I looked toward the dress beneath the work lamp. "And it isn't in that one." "No." "Could it have fallen out?" "Not the way I secure it." She lifted the skirt lining and showed me a narrow fabric loop stitched flat against the seam. "This is how I attach a ceremonial pin. The pin passes through the loop, then through a hidden backing piece. It can be removed, but it won't fall out by itself." The loop on the dress was empty. It also looked newer than the rest of the lining. I touched the edge without pulling it. "Was a pin ever here?" "Not mine." Laura turned several pages until she reached order 1188. Morgan's name appeared at the top. Her order page contained fewer construction notes. The first sketch showed a narrow fitted gown with a low back. "That isn't what I brought home," I said. "No." Laura pointed to a later date. 3 weeks before our joint fitting, Morgan had changed the design. Not adjusted it, changed it. The second sketch resembled mine. It had the same neckline, full skirt, and fitted sleeves. The details were simpler. The fabric cost less. The bodice used machine work where mine had been finished by hand. I read Morgan's request twice. Customer wants silhouette similar to Foster Order 1187. Rush completion. No ceremonial pin. I looked at Laura. You let her copy my dress? I let her order a similar shape. I didn't give her your pattern. Why would she want it? She said your mother wanted the wedding photographs to look coordinated. Our weddings are 10 weeks apart. I know that now. You knew the dates. I knew the month for each. I wasn't managing the family calendar. Her answer was sharper than usual. She took a breath. I should have called you. I thought it was irritating, not dishonest. What did Morgan say exactly? Laura rested both hands on the ledger. She came alone. She had a photograph of your sketch on her phone. My copy of that sketch had spent months on our refrigerator. Mom also had a copy in her wedding binder. Did she say where she got it? No. She said you'd shown her. I didn't. I understand that now. Laura continued. Morgan said she liked the cleaner shape. She asked if I could make something close enough to have the same family style, but faster. How much did it cost? Just under $6,000. That was expensive by my standards. It was nowhere near $38,000. Who paid the deposit? Morgan used her own card, and Mom paid the balance at pickup. Yes. I looked down at the page. Morgan had ordered a less expensive version of my gown weeks before the fitting. Then she had left with the one Grandma's trust paid for. That was no longer a random bag switch. How many people knew which bag held which gown? I asked. Jacob prepared both garment bags from the order slips. I checked your gown before the appointment. Another seamstress helped with Morgan's rush work. Did Morgan ever go into the workroom? Not that I saw. Could she tell the gowns apart through the bag panels? Laura nodded. Yours had the hand-finished skirt. Anyone who knew what to look for could see the difference. And Morgan knew what to look for. She had seen the sketch. She had also tried on her own gown before the joint appointment. I looked up. When? 2 days earlier. I had assumed the joint appointment was Morgan's first complete fitting. What did she say about it? That the waist needed adjustment. Did she like it? Laura hesitated. She asked whether yours was finished. My hand stopped on the edge of the ledger. What did you tell her? I said I was completing the lining. Did she ask about the pin? No. That should have made me feel better. It didn't. Morgan didn't need to know about the pin to know Grandma had left money at the shop. She had asked me about the bank. She had seen the estate papers. She had copied my design. Then she had stood near both garment bags while Mom searched for the florist card. I could see the bench clearly, Morgan's phone in her hand, her sleeve catching the ticket, her fingers steadying it. Only she hadn't been steadying anything. She switched the tickets, I said. Laura didn't answer immediately. I can't prove that from the ledger. You don't have to. Yes, I do. She turned back to my order. I can prove which dress I made for you. I can prove where I placed the pin. I can prove Morgan ordered a second gown similar to yours. I cannot prove who moved 2 pieces of paper in the front room. I watched her touch them. Did you watch her switch them? No. Then don't turn memory into more than it is. I leaned back. She was right, and I disliked her for about 3 seconds. Then I looked at the dates again. Why did the bank pay in May? Laura's face tightened. It shouldn't have. Did you send a final certification? No. The answer came without hesitation. Did anyone at your shop send one? No one here has authority to sign it except me. Daniel's system says the file was complete. Then his system is wrong. Could you have signed something without realizing what it was? Laura closed the ledger. I trained under your grandmother. I've held that pin for 32 years. I know what my signature means. She stood and walked to a locked cabinet near the pressing station. From the top drawer, she removed a wooden sewing box. The brass latch made a small click. Inside were thread cards, old labels, a silver thimble, and a folded square of blue cloth. Laura unfolded the cloth. It was empty. She stared at it for a moment, then folded it again. I keep the thistle pin here until I place it, she said. I recorded the placement in the ledger. That means the pin is inside order 1187, which is hanging in Morgan's house. Yes. The words sat between us. Morgan had my gown. She had Grandma's pin. The bank had already paid Laura. Mom had paid the smaller balance on Morgan's decoy. Every visible piece made the switch look ordinary. That was what changed my mind. If you've ever watched someone plan a mistake and call it an accident, leave the word thistle in the comments. I asked Laura for copies of both workroom pages. She didn't make them immediately. These contain client information. Morgan's information is evidence that she copied my order. It may become evidence. Right now, it's a shop record. Then preserve it. I will. Photograph every page connected to both orders. Include the binding and page numbers. Save the images somewhere Jacob can't access. Laura gave me a long look. You sound like Vicky. Grandma would already have 3 copies. She would have hidden one in a flour tin. Then use a flour tin. Laura almost smiled. It disappeared quickly. She took her phone from the cutting table and photographed the ledger. I watched her capture the full pages, then closer images of each dated note. She emailed the photographs to herself and copied them to a small external drive from her desk. What about the dress I brought back? I asked. It stays here. Under which order? 1188. Can you finish it for Morgan? I could. Don't. Laura looked at me. I'm not asking you to damage it. I'm asking you not to alter anything until we understand what happened. That means neither gown is ready for either bride. My wedding is in October, and Morgan's is in August. I know. Laura placed the external drive in the sewing box and locked the cabinet. What are you going to do? She asked. I'm going to let Morgan think Mom handled it. That isn't an answer. It's the only one I have today. My phone rang. Mom's name filled the screen. Laura saw it. Are you going to answer? Yes. I put the phone on speaker without telling Mom where I was. She began before I could say hello. I spoke to Laura's voicemail. She hasn't called me back. She's closed today. That has never stopped her before. What do you need? I need you to bring Morgan's dress to my house. It isn't at my house anymore. Laura stayed still across the table. Mom said, Where is it? At the shop. Why? Because it belongs to the shop until they finish correcting it. You had no right to return Morgan's gown without asking. I looked at Laura. She raised one eyebrow. I had the right to return the dress attached to Morgan's order number. Mom lowered her voice. Do you hear yourself? Yes. Morgan has enough pressure. Alexander's mother has changed the rehearsal dinner twice. The florist is threatening an extra delivery fee. Now you're holding her gown hostage over a tag. I'm not holding anything. Then tell Laura to release it. To whom? To Morgan. That isn't your decision. I paid the bill. There it was. Mom believed her signature settled the matter. I said, You paid the balance for order 1188. Exactly. So Laura can return 1188 when she decides it's complete. Mom went quiet. I could hear a cabinet close in the background. What about the dress Morgan has? I asked. That's being handled. How? I told her to keep it bagged until Laura calls. Did she agree? Of course. I thought about Morgan saying she had already tried it on. I want it brought to the shop tomorrow. Mom's voice sharpened. Stop giving orders. Then ask Laura what happens next. You are making this much harder than it needs to be. No, I'm making everyone use the right numbers. She hung up. Laura reached for her glasses. She's going to call again. She can. What if Morgan brings the gown tomorrow, inspect it? And if the pin is there? I looked at the empty blue cloth. Don't remove it. Laura nodded slowly. That afternoon, Daniel emailed to say Central Records had located the release packet. He asked me to come in Monday at 4. I forwarded the message to Joshua, then drove home. He was grading papers at the kitchen table. Red pens, answer sheets, and an empty coffee mug covered one end. He looked up when I entered. What did the ledger say? I sat across from him. Morgan ordered a cheaper copy of my dress 3 weeks before the fitting. His pen stayed above the page. Why? She told Laura Mom wanted coordinated photographs. Do you believe that? No. What else? Laura put Grandma's pin in my gown that morning. It isn't in the dress we brought home. So the pin is with Morgan. Yes? Joshua set down the pen. Does your mother know? She knows enough to be angry with me. That isn't what I asked. No, she doesn't know about the pin. Are you going to tell her? I looked at the clock above the stove. Mom had spent 30 years smoothing the ground in front of Morgan. If I told her everything now, she would warn her. Maybe she would call it help. Maybe she would call it protecting the wedding. The result would be the same. No, I said, not yet. The next morning, Morgan arrived at Laura's shop without the gown. She asked Laura to give her the gown from 1188. Laura called me 8 minutes later. I was in the parking lot at work with my coffee balanced on the center console. She wants the other dress? I asked. She says your mother paid for it. That part is true. She also says you agreed to keep the gown currently at her house. I agreed to nothing. I assume that. What did you tell her? That 1188 needs additional work. Does it? It needs to fit the person wearing it. I leaned back against the headrest. Did she mention the pin? No. Did she mention the trust? No. She was mainly concerned about whether I could finish the sleeves before her shower. Her shower? She plans to wear the dress for part of it. Which dress? She didn't specify. My coffee suddenly tasted bitter. She's planning to wear my gown at her bridal shower. I don't know that. We both know it. Laura lowered her voice. She believes you accepted the switch. Mom probably told her I did. What do you want me to do? Keep 1188 at the shop. And the other one? Don't ask for it yet. Laura was silent. You're giving her time to alter it, she said. She won't let anyone else touch a Laura Murray gown this close to the wedding. She might if she realizes the pin matters. She doesn't know it matters. You're sure? No. That was the problem with keeping quiet. I had to live beside everything I didn't know. Laura said, I don't like leaving your gown with her. Neither do I. Then why are we doing it? Because she thinks the only issue is a switch ticket. I want to know why she needed that dress before she knows what I found. Laura didn't approve. I could hear it. Still, she said, I'll keep the decoy here. It was the first time either of us called it that. Morgan's bridal shower was Saturday at Mom's house. The invitation said garden brunch, though the forecast called for rain. Mom rented a white tent for the backyard and had Dad string lights beneath it. I arrived at 10 with a tray of fruit and a gift from Joshua and me. The gift was a set of serving bowls Morgan had chosen from her registry. I bought exactly what she requested. Mom met me at the door. You're wearing navy? It's a dress. It looks dark for a shower. It is a shower, not a uniform. She glanced toward the driveway. Please don't discuss the shop today. I wasn't planning to. Morgan is already stressed. Then stop bringing it up. Mom pressed her lips together. Laura has been difficult. Laura won't release unfinished work. I paid for that gown. You paid for 1188. You keep saying that like it changes the fact that my card was charged. It changes which dress you bought. A car door closed outside. Mom lowered her voice. Not today. I agreed before you asked. She opened the door for 2 guests and immediately changed her face. The backyard tent held round tables covered with pale green cloths. Mom had arranged white flowers in low glass bowls. A mimosa station stood near the porch. Dad was carrying ice from the garage while Alexander's mother directed someone to move the gift table away from a damp patch of grass. Morgan's friends came in groups. Several worked with her. Others knew her from college or from Alexander's social circle. I recognized Tessa near the drink table. She had been friends with Morgan for years and had helped sort items after Grandma died. She hugged me with one arm while holding a glass in the other. How's your wedding planning? She asked. Still happening. She laughed. I know everything's been Morgan. That sounds familiar. Tessa glanced toward the house. She's been a little intense. She's getting married in 6 weeks. She was intense before that. We both smiled. Tessa lowered her voice. Is she doing better with the money stuff? I looked at her. What money stuff? Her expression shifted. Never mind, you already asked. It's not my business. Then why did you think I knew? She took a drink and looked toward the tent entrance. I thought Lori told you. Mom hasn't told me anything. Tessa turned the stem of her glass between her fingers. Forget I said it. I didn't press her then. People tell you more when they don't feel cornered. We carried our drinks to a table. A few minutes later, Mom called everyone's attention. She stood near the porch steps holding a microphone borrowed from the venue company. I know we're supposed to wait for the bride, she said, but Morgan has a surprise. The back door opened. Morgan stepped outside wearing my gown. The rain had stopped, and the afternoon light made the silk look almost silver. The skirt moved exactly the way it had in Laura's sketch. The neckline sat low and clean. The sleeves ended at her wrist bones. It fit her better than it had fit me. Not because it belonged to her, because she had the frame Laura's finished gown hadn't been altered to resist. She was taller through the torso, but the skirt covered the difference. The shoulders were slightly loose. No one else would notice. Everyone clapped. I kept both hands around my glass. Tessa said, "Oh, wow." Mom looked as if she had arranged the sun herself. Morgan turned once beneath the tent. She held the skirt away from the wet grass and smiled while people reached for their phones. Alexander's mother stood near the front. "That's the Murray gown?" she asked. Morgan nodded. "Custom from the first stitch. Beautiful." The approval in her voice mattered to Morgan. I could see it. Mom raised the microphone. "To our showstopper daughter." More applause followed. Dad stood at the edge of the tent holding an empty ice bag. His eyes found mine. Then he looked at the gown. For 1 second, I thought he might say something. He folded the bag and walked toward the garage. Morgan moved from table to table while people complimented the fabric and handwork. She did not look at me until she reached my chair. "Well?" she asked. "You had it altered, just the shoulders. By whom?" "A friend." Laura had been right to worry. Morgan smiled for the people watching us. "Don't make that face. Nothing was cut." "What face?" "The one where you think you own the room." I looked at the gown. "No," I said, "just the dress." Her smile held. "You brought home mine. Mom paid for it. Nobody lost anything. You know that isn't true." Her eyes hardened. "Not here." Then she turned to hug another guest. Tessa watched her go. "That was weird," she said. "She left the fitting with my order." Tessa looked from Morgan to me. "You're serious?" "Yes. I thought Lori bought that. She bought a different gown." Tessa's mouth opened slightly. Then she said, "Oh." It was not surprise alone. Something had connected for her. "What?" I asked. She looked around before answering. "I really shouldn't be in this. You brought up money earlier. I thought it was settled." "What was settled?" Tessa set her glass on the table. "Last fall, Morgan asked me to help her organize her cards. I'm good with spreadsheets. She said she wanted everything cleaned up before Alexander proposed." "How much?" "I don't remember exactly." "Tessa." She rubbed her thumb along a water ring on the tablecloth. "A little over 21,000. The number landed quietly. "Credit cards?" "Mostly. Store cards, too. One personal loan." "Does Alexander know?" "She told me he did." "You don't believe her." Tessa looked toward Alexander's mother. "I heard them talking at Christmas. His mother made some comment about people who carry consumer debt being irresponsible." Morgan went completely silent. "What did Alexander say?" "He agreed with his mother. That explained more than the amount." Morgan didn't only need a dress. She needed Alexander's family to believe she could afford it without effort. I asked, "Did she pay the debt?" She moved some of it around. "That means no. She said the wedding gifts would help." I watched Morgan pose beside the flower wall Mom had ordered. She held one hand at her waist, careful to display the beadwork. "Did Morgan ever mention Grandma's estate?" Tessa looked at me. "She asked me to help your mom sort the financial folders." "When?" "After the funeral." "What did she see?" "I don't know. I wasn't there for all of it." "You said you helped?" "I made labels and organized statements by account." Morgan did the estate documents with Lori. "Did she mention an account in my name?" Tessa thought for a moment. She asked me what restricted beneficiary meant. My fingers tightened around the edge of the table. What did you tell her? That it usually meant money could only be used for a specific thing. When was that? A few weeks after the funeral. Did she say what the specific thing was? No. She said it was hypothetical. It hadn't been hypothetical. Morgan had read the trust document in 2024. She knew money existed for a dress before either of us got engaged. When I told her the bank was handling my gown, she hadn't learned something new. She had confirmed that Grandma's arrangement was active. Tessa touched my arm. Shelby, I didn't know she took your dress. I know. Is the expensive one yours? Yes. How expensive? $38,000. She stared at me. That's the exact number. What exact number? She said there was $38,000 sitting at Laura's shop. When? Tessa looked ill. The night we worked on her cards. She'd had wine. She said her grandmother had left $38,000 for a dress nobody had even ordered. Did she say it belonged to me? No. She said the family had money trapped in a bridal account. A laugh rose from the other side of the tent. Morgan stood among Alexander's relatives while Mom adjusted the skirt for another photograph. The whole shape was there. Morgan was carrying roughly $21,000 in hidden debt. She was marrying into a family that treated debt like a character defect. She wanted a couture gown that would support the life she claimed to have. She couldn't pay for one. Then she remembered Grandma's trust. She copied my design so the two dresses could be confused. She ordered the cheaper version under her own number. Mom paid that bill without checking. Morgan switched the claim tickets and left with the gown funded for me. If anyone noticed, she had an easy explanation. Two sisters had similar dresses. The shop double booked us. The young assistant mixed up the tickets. Mom had a receipt. And because my wedding came later, Morgan expected me to wait. She hadn't taken the gown because she loved it more. She took it because the price made her look like someone Alexander's family would accept. The dress was proof of money she didn't have. Tessa said, "What are you going to do?" Morgan turned beneath the lights, surrounded by raised phones. "I'm going to let her finish showing everyone what she chose." Tessa stared at me. "You're not going to tell her?" "Not today. She's wearing your wedding dress. I can see that. I would be losing my mind." I picked up my glass. That wouldn't get the dress back. Morgan remained in the gown for another 20 minutes. She posed with Mom, Alexander's mother, and every bridesmaid. She even stood beside me for one photograph. Mom held the phone. "Get closer together." Morgan moved against my shoulder. I could feel the weight of the skirt pressing against my leg. Mom smiled at the screen. "Beautiful." "Both of you," Morgan whispered. "Don't ruin this." I looked toward the camera. I'm not doing anything. That was what frightened her. After the photographs, Morgan changed upstairs. She returned in a white linen dress and continued opening gifts as if nothing had happened. I left before the last game. Tessa followed me to the driveway. "Are you going to use what I told you? I'm going to verify it. Please don't drag my name into a family fight. I won't lie about where I learned it." She looked toward the house. "I know. If anyone asks, tell the truth." That sounds easy when you say it. It's easier than remembering a lie. She gave me a tired smile. I drove straight to Laura's shop. She had agreed to meet me there after the shower. I brought the photograph Mom had taken of Morgan and me. Laura enlarged it on her tablet. "That's your gown," she said. "Can you identify it from a photograph?" "I can identify my own handwork. Would that be enough for the bank?" "No." She zoomed in near the left side of the skirt. "The pin is inside this seam. I'd need to feel the lining and confirm it. Can you do that without taking the gown apart?" "Yes." "Could Morgan find it?" "If she knew where to look." "Don't tell anyone where it is." "I haven't." Laura set down the tablet. "I received a message from Lori this morning. She wants me at Pine Hollow on the wedding day for final steaming and a hem check. Is that normal? It's a service I provide for local weddings. She booked it months ago. So you'll have access to the gown. If Morgan doesn't cancel me." "She won't. She wants everyone to know Laura Murray finished her dress." Laura's mouth tightened. She seems comfortable saying that. She thinks Mom's payment makes it true. Payment doesn't change the order record. No, it gives her something to wave around. I asked Laura to print the receipt Mom signed. She opened the shop's billing system and found the pickup file. The receipt showed a card charge for the remaining balance on order 1188. Lori Foster appeared on the signature line. Laura printed 2 copies. I placed one in my blue folder. The other went into a new file she kept in the locked cabinet with the ledger images. Now we can prove Mom paid Morgan's bill, I said. We can prove she paid 1188. That is Morgan's bill. Yes, Laura spoke carefully. We still can't prove Lori knew about the switch. I don't think she did. Then why is she defending it? Because Morgan wants the outcome. Laura looked at the signed receipt. That's a costly habit. On Monday afternoon, I returned to Daniel's office. He had the Central Records packet spread across his desk. A woman from estate operations joined us by video from Montgomery. Daniel introduced her as Karen, then closed his office door. Karen looked down at a second screen. I reviewed the disbursement, she said. The payment was processed from a final invoice submitted by the atelier. Laura had emailed the invoice in May. It listed my name, order 1187, and the full trust amount. I said, an invoice isn't a certification. No, Daniel said, it isn't. Karen continued. The account workflow was configured to release upon receipt of a final invoice. The certification requirement was retained in the governing document, but it was not added as a separate processing hold, meaning someone set up the account wrong. Daniel answered, yes. He didn't soften it. The bank released the money before Laura certified delivery. Yes. Can you reverse it? Karen looked toward her camera. If the trust conditions remain unmet, the bank has a contractual recovery right against the payment. Against Laura? Against the recipient atelier first. The atelier may then reclaim the unpaid garment. I looked at Daniel. So the bank takes $38,000 back from Laura, and Laura takes my gown back from Morgan. If the delivered gown was not certified under the trust, he said, what would certification require now? Daniel turned the trust document toward me. Laura must confirm 3 things. The gown matches Order 1187. It was delivered for your use. It carries the thistle pin. It was delivered to Morgan. That is the issue. Could Laura certify it after Morgan returns it? If the gown remains intact and is delivered to you, yes. And if Morgan wears it at her wedding first? Daniel's expression answered before he spoke. Then it was not delivered for your use, Karen added. The bank would have to treat the trust purpose as unmet. I took out the photograph from the shower. Does this establish delivery to Morgan? Daniel studied it. It establishes possession and use. She wore it publicly. I can see that. Laura identified it as 1187. From a photograph? Yes. Daniel looked at Karen. She said, for a formal determination, we would need physical verification. By Laura? The trust names her. I opened my blue folder and placed Mom's receipt beside the photograph. This is the payment for 1188. Daniel read the order number and signature. Where did you get it? From Laura's billing file. May I copy it? Yes. He scanned the receipt, then returned it to me. The proof now formed a straight line. Mom paid for order 1188. The trust paid for 1187. The dress in my possession was 1188. Morgan wore 1187 at her shower. Laura's ledger said my gown carried the pin. The bank had no certification. I asked, what authority does Laura have to reclaim the dress? Karen answered. Her sales terms retain title until valid payment conditions are satisfied. The shop received the money, conditionally under the trust agreement. Even though the bank made the mistake, the trust document controls the disbursement. The bank's error doesn't convert an uncertified delivery into a certified one. Daniel leaned forward. Shelby, we're not saying the bank can walk into a private home and take a dress. I understand. If Morgan refuses to return it, Laura would use ordinary civil recovery procedures. But if Laura physically verifies the pin while Morgan is wearing it? Karen paused. Then Laura can state the garment was produced under your order and delivered to the wrong person, and the bank can reverse the payment. If the certification conditions failed, yes. It was the first clean answer I had received. I asked Daniel for a beneficiary copy of the trust and the payment record. He provided both. Karen sent a written summary confirming the missing certification hold and the bank's recovery requirement. Daniel printed that too. He signed the bottom and dated it. "Keep these secure," he said. "I will." "What are you planning?" "I haven't decided." He looked at the shower photograph. "You brought this for a reason." "I brought it because it proves Morgan has already used the gown. You could request recovery now." Would Laura have to take the dress immediately? If Morgan cooperated, she won't, then the bank would issue notices, and Mom would warn her. Daniel closed the central records packet. "You're allowed to be angry. You're not allowed to interfere with the bank's process. I'm not asking you to delay anything improperly. What are you asking? For the bank to preserve the records while Laura verifies the garment. That's reasonable. And I'm asking you not to contact Morgan before verification." Daniel considered it. "She isn't a trust party. We have no reason to contact her yet." "Good. I will notify the atelier that the disbursement is under review. Laura already knows. She still needs formal notice." I nodded. Daniel placed the trust copy into the blue folder. "Once Laura verifies the PIN, the result won't be private." "I know." That evening, I spread everything across our dining table. Joshua read each page in order. He did not speak until he reached Karen's written summary. Then he tapped one sentence. "So this is the lever. It's not a trick." I didn't say it was. The bank paid under conditions. The conditions weren't met, and Laura still owns the gown until the payment is valid. He looked at the photograph of Morgan wearing it. "Does she know that?" "No." "Does your mother?" "No." What do they think the receipt proves? That Mom bought the dress Morgan left behind. Joshua set the papers down. "Are you going to wait until the wedding?" I looked at Grandma's trust document. "I'm going to wait until Laura can verify the PIN." He didn't ask when that would happen. He had already seen the appointment on Laura's service agreement. Morgan's wedding morning, 9 o'clock, Pine Hollow Farm. I gathered the documents and placed them back into the folder. Then I locked it in the fireproof box beneath our bed. The next day, Daniel called. "I need to tell you something before you hear it from your mother," he said. "What happened?" Lori called the bank. "About the trust?" "Yes." "What did she ask?" Daniel paused. "She wants the beneficiary changed before Morgan's wedding." "She can't," I said. I told her that. "Did she say why?" "She said Vicky would have wanted both granddaughters treated equally." I stood near the office window with my phone against my ear. Grandma wrote the opposite. She wrote one beneficiary. "What did Mom ask you to do?" "First, she asked whether the trust could reimburse her card." "For the decoy?" "She called it Morgan's gown. She paid just under $6,000. The trust was $38,000. I explained that. And she said the difference could be applied to wedding expenses." I closed my eyes. Grandma had built 4 separate conditions around one gift, and Mom still treated them like suggestions. "Did you tell her about the missing certification?" "No. She isn't the beneficiary, and the disbursement review is confidential." "Thank you." "She knows enough to suspect a problem. She thinks the problem is me." Daniel was quiet. "Does Morgan know Lori called?" "I have no way to know." Mom answered that question that evening. She and Morgan were waiting outside our house when I got home. Morgan sat in Mom's car with the window open. Mom stood beside my driveway holding a folder. Joshua had not arrived yet. I parked in the garage and stayed behind the wheel long enough to text him. "Mom and Morgan are here. Don't rush. I'm okay." Then I got out. Mom walked toward me. "We need to settle this." "There's nothing to settle in my driveway." "Then invite us inside." "No." Morgan climbed out of the car. She wore sunglasses even though the sun was behind a cloud. Can we act like adults for 10 minutes? You came to my house without calling because you won't answer me. She had called twice since the shower. I had let both calls go to voicemail. Mom opened her folder. Inside was a typed agreement. The first paragraph said I would authorize First State to apply Grandma's trust funds to Morgan's gown. The second said Morgan would return my original gown after her wedding, professionally cleaned. I read the first page. Who wrote this? Mom said, a friend helped. What friend? That doesn't matter. It does if they told you this could change a trust. It's a family agreement. The bank isn't part of our family. Morgan pulled off her sunglasses. You're being deliberately difficult. No, I'm reading what you brought me. You get the dress back. After you wear it. Yes. No. Mom held out a pen. Shelby, the invitations are sent. The photographs are scheduled. The alterations are done. Then wear the gown Mom paid for. It isn't finished, Morgan said. Laura will finish it for you. She won't have it ready in time. She had it ready enough for me to take home. Morgan's face tightened. You don't even like your dress. I liked mine. You complained about the sleeves. Those were your sleeves. Mom pushed the agreement toward me again. Sign this, and everyone gets what they need. I looked at her. Everyone? She knew what I meant. This isn't the time to compare weddings. You're standing in my driveway asking me to give Morgan mine. Temporarily. A wedding gown isn't temporary after someone marries in it. Morgan crossed her arms. You are not going to wear a $38,000 dress to prove a point. I didn't choose the price. Neither did I. No. You just chose the dress. She looked away first. Mom said, your grandmother left more than enough for one gown made for me, and Morgan is your sister. That isn't a trust condition. Mom's voice rose. Stop talking to me like I'm applying for a loan. I kept mine level. Then stop asking me to sign financial documents. Joshua's car turned onto our street. Morgan saw it and lowered her voice. If you embarrass me over this, there's no fixing it. I haven't told Alexander. Her face changed. That confirmed Tessa's information better than any denial could have. Mom stepped closer. Alexander has nothing to do with this. Then why are you worried? Morgan put on her sunglasses. You've always resented me. That's easier than answering. She opened the passenger door. Mom remained in front of me. Think about what you're doing to this family. I am. I handed the agreement back unsigned. After they left, Joshua read it at the kitchen table. This doesn't even identify the order numbers, he said. They don't want numbers. It also says you waive future claims. I saw that. Whoever wrote this knew there could be a claim, probably one of Alexander's friends. Does he know? I don't think so. Joshua folded the agreement once. Are you still going to the wedding? Yes. Do you want me beside you? I want you there. I don't know where beside me will be. He understood. Over the next 5 weeks, Mom stopped calling unless wedding logistics required it. Morgan sent one message. I'm wearing the dress. Do whatever you need to do afterward. I saved a screenshot. I didn't respond. Laura received 3 calls from Mom confirming the steaming appointment. Morgan sent her photographs of the shoulder alteration and asked whether the hem would hold on grass. She never mentioned the pin. Daniel completed the bank's internal review. The written finding was simple. The payment had been released without Laura's required certification. The trust conditions remained open. He told me the bank would wait for physical verification before issuing recovery notices. I'll be at Pine Hollow that morning, he said. For the dress? For an executor release? Dad had asked Daniel to bring the final paperwork connected to the sale of Grandma's house. One small reserve had remained open for property expenses. Daniel needed both co-executors to sign, and Mom had told him the wedding morning was the only time she and Dad would be together before month end. You're bringing estate paperwork to a wedding. Your mother suggested it. That sounds like her. I'll leave after they sign. I looked at Laura's 9 o'clock service time on my calendar. What time are you meeting them? 9:15. The timing wasn't something I created. I simply didn't change it. The night before the wedding, Joshua and I stayed home. We ate takeout at the kitchen table. My own invitation to Pine Hollow rested beside the blue folder. He asked, "Are you scared?" "Yes." "Of what?" "That everyone will hear the facts and still ask me to let her keep it." "What will you do if they do?" "The facts won't change." He reached across the table and took my hand. I didn't sleep much. Pine Hollow Farm sat outside town at the end of a 2-lane road. The ceremony lawn faced a line of pine trees, and the reception barn stood behind the main house. By 8:45, vendor vans filled the gravel lot. Joshua and I arrived separately. He went toward the guest entrance. I carried the blue folder through the side door of the main house. Laura was already inside with a steamer, sewing kit, and rolling rack. The emergency gown hung inside a plain garment bag behind her. I noticed it immediately. "Why did you bring that? I always bring one." The dress was simple. Soft ivory fabric, cap sleeves, no beadwork. Laura kept several adjustable samples for damaged zippers, wine spills, and other wedding day emergencies. "She won't wear it," I said. "That's her decision." "Did Daniel arrive?" "He's with your father in the front office." Upstairs, voices moved between the bridal room and hallway. Someone laughed. A hairdryer stopped and started. Mom came down the stairs carrying a box of jewelry. She saw me beside Laura. "You're early. So are you. I've been here since 6. She looked at the blue folder. "What is that?" "Paperwork." "This is not the day." I didn't say it was. She turned to Laura. "Morgan's hem needs checking near the left side. The shoulder alteration changed how the skirt falls." "Who altered it?" Laura asked. "A friend. I need the name for my service record." Mom looked irritated. "Why? Because I need to know what was changed. This is exactly what I was afraid of." "Please don't turn steaming into an investigation." Laura picked up her sewing kit. "I'll inspect the gown I was hired to service." Mom glanced at me again. "Stay downstairs. I'm a guest. Then go sit with the guests. The ceremony doesn't start for an hour." She lowered her voice. "Let Morgan have one peaceful morning." Laura walked past her toward the stairs. I followed. Mom caught my arm. I looked down at her hand. She released me. "Don't," she said. "I haven't done anything." That answer still made her angry. Upstairs, the bridal room was crowded. 6 women stood around the mirrors with makeup bags, curling irons, and open champagne bottles. Morgan's bouquet rested in a vase near the window. Morgan stood on the fitting platform wearing my gown. She looked finished. The shoulder alteration had pulled the bodice into place. The skirt fell cleanly to the floor. Grandma's hand-finished lace edged the cuffs. Alexander's mother stood near the doorway. She said, "That dress was worth every penny." Mom entered behind me. It certainly was. Morgan met my eyes in the mirror. She didn't look worried. She looked relieved. A photographer asked her to turn toward the window. Morgan lifted the skirt and moved without waiting for Laura. Laura set down her sewing kit. "I need to check the hem before photographs." "It's fine," Morgan said. "The left side is pulling. My mother said that, not me." Laura stepped closer. "I'm responsible for the final service." Morgan looked around the room. Everyone was watching. Then she smiled. "Go ahead. It's my dress, and my mother paid the bill. I want it perfect." Mom nodded as if the statement settled everything. From downstairs, I heard Dad greet Daniel. Guests were beginning to gather near the ceremony lawn. The musicians tested the first notes of the processional. Laura knelt beside Morgan's left hem and slid one hand beneath the lining. Her fingers stopped. She felt along the seam again, then opened her sewing kit. "Don't move," she said. Morgan looked down. "What is it?" Laura removed a small pair of scissors and clipped one thread inside the fabric loop. Then she drew out the brass thistle pin. The room went silent. The pin rested in her palm, dark at the edges and bent along one side. Laura looked at Morgan. "I placed this in Shelby's gown." Morgan's face changed exactly as I remembered from the beginning. Mom stepped forward. "That pin doesn't prove who owns a dress." Laura stood. "It proves which order this gown belongs to." Morgan looked at me. "You did this. I haven't touched the dress. You put her up to it." Laura closed her hand around the pin. "No one puts me up to recognizing my own work." Alexander's mother moved away from the door. "What is happening?" Morgan lifted her skirt. "Nothing." "There was a mix-up at the shop," Laura said. "This gown was made under Order 1187 for Shelby Foster. I never certified it for Morgan." Mom's voice became sharp. I paid the bill. "For Order 1188, I said. I opened the blue folder and handed her the receipt. She looked at her signature. "That's my card." "Yes." Daniel appeared in the doorway with Dad behind him. Several bridesmaids moved into the hall. The photographer lowered her camera but didn't leave. Mom held the receipt toward Daniel. "Tell them payment settles this." He read the page. "This is the balance for 1188. I paid what they put in front of me. Did you check the order number?" Mom looked around the room. "No." "Did you check which gown the receipt described?" "No, because Morgan needed me to sign it." Her own answer reached her before anyone explained it. Daniel opened the estate packet he was carrying. The trust paid $38,000 toward Order 1187. That payment required Laura's written certification that the gown was delivered to Shelby and carried the thistle pin. Laura held up the pin. "I never signed that certification." Daniel nodded. "Then the trust conditions weren't met. The bank has to reverse the disbursement." Morgan's voice rose. "You can't reverse money during my wedding. The timing doesn't change the document." "What does that have to do with my dress?" Laura answered. "If the bank reverses payment, my atelier hasn't been paid for this gown. My sales agreement says it remains shop property." Morgan stared at her. "You're taking my dress off me? I'm asking you to change so I can secure an unpaid garment." The hallway had filled behind Daniel. Dad's sister stood near the stairs. Two of Alexander's relatives had come inside after hearing voices. Guests on the lawn turned toward the open doors. Morgan saw them. "You planned this humiliation," she said to me. "No. You planned to wear my gown in public. You could have stopped me earlier. I asked for it back." Mom sat down near the mirror. "I thought Shelby would let it go," she said. Dad looked at her. "You knew Morgan had Shelby's dress?" Mom pressed the receipt between both hands. "I knew the bags had been switched." "And you let her wear it?" "It was already altered. The wedding was close." Dad's face settled into a look I had never seen him give her. "No, Lori. Say what you did." Mom looked toward the hallway. For once, there was no private room left for her answer. "I signed the bill without checking," she said. "Then I told Shelby not to interfere because Morgan's wedding came first." Nobody spoke. Morgan turned toward Alexander, who had reached the top of the stairs. He looked at the gown, then at Daniel. "Is this true?" Daniel said, "Yes." Alexander asked Morgan, "Did you switch the tickets?" She gripped the skirt. "It was supposed to be temporary. That isn't an answer. I needed the dress." "Why?" She looked at his mother. I said nothing. Morgan finally told him about the debt herself. Not every detail, but enough. Roughly $21,000. Cards he didn't know about, a personal loan, the trust document she had seen after Grandma died. Alexander sat on the top stair. His mother walked outside without speaking. Laura gave Morgan the emergency gown. Morgan changed behind the locked bridal room door. Laura placed my gown in its garment bag and carried it to her van. She kept Grandma's pin in the blue cloth. The ceremony began 53 minutes late. 53. Morgan married Alexander in the plain ivory dress from Laura's emergency rack. It had cap sleeves, a simple waist, and no handwork to photograph closely. Nobody applauded when she appeared at the top of the aisle. Then Dad stood and a few guests followed. The rest joined slowly. Joshua held my hand through the ceremony. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired. On Monday, First State issued the recovery notice. Laura returned the $38,000 to the trust account. The bank waived every fee because its processing error had allowed the early release. Laura reclaimed my gown and documented its condition. Morgan's shoulder alteration could be corrected. Nothing permanent had been cut. Mom's card payment remained attached to order 1188. That was the gown she had actually bought. Morgan entered a repayment agreement covering Laura's emergency dress, the unauthorized alterations, and the expenses caused by the switch. She also began paying down her hidden debt. Alexander stayed married to her, but they postponed their planned house purchase. He took over their household budget. His mother stopped inviting Morgan to the weekly family dinners. Morgan called me once. "I hope you're happy," she said. "I'm not. You got everything. I got my own dress back." She started crying. I waited. Then she said, "Grandma never would have done that for me." There it was. The part beneath the debt and the wedding photographs? "No," I said. "She wouldn't have." "Why? You knew her." Morgan ended the call. We didn't speak again before October. Mom's apology came in September at my parents' dining table. Dad asked Joshua and me to dinner. When Mom began with, "I'm sorry things became so upsetting," Dad stopped her. "That's not an apology." She looked at him. He didn't lower his eyes this time. Mom folded her napkin. "I'm sorry I knew Morgan had your gown and helped her keep it. I'm sorry I signed a bill without checking because she wanted something. I'm sorry I expected you to accept less so she wouldn't be embarrassed." I let the silence sit. Then I said, "Why?" Mom looked down at her plate. "Because Morgan makes every problem feel urgent. You make yours look manageable. That doesn't make mine smaller." "I know." "No. You know now." She nodded. "I told her she could attend my wedding. She would not manage the flowers, the dress, the schedule, or any decision involving money. If she argued once, the invitation would be withdrawn." She agreed. Dad apologized after she left the table. He said, "I kept quiet because quiet was easier." I know. I should have stopped it years ago. Yes, that was all I gave him then. It was enough to begin with. In October, Dad walked me down the aisle. Mom sat in the second row beside an empty seat where Morgan would have been. She didn't ask me to fill it. She didn't explain Morgan's absence to anyone. Joshua waited beneath oak branches strung with small lights. When he saw me, he smiled the same way he had in our kitchen with the ring in his pocket. My gown fit correctly. Laura restored the shoulders, rebuilt the lining, and finished every seam herself. Before she zipped me into it, she unfolded the blue cloth. "Do you want the pin back inside?" she asked. "Yes." She secured the brass thistle beneath the left skirt seam, exactly where Grandma had intended. Most people never saw it. They didn't need to. The truth doesn't become more valuable because everyone can see it. Sometimes it only needs the right person to check the lining. If you want more stories like mine, subscribe and tell me which city you're watching from.